Good evening, everyone. My name is R.C. McBride, and I'm the General Manager for WGLT, which is the National Public Radio, or NPR, member radio station on the Illinois State University campus, and it's a part of the School of Communication as well. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to Illinois State University's 3-Minute Thesis Competition Finals, sponsored by the Graduate School. So, if you've not been here before, what is a 3-minute thesis? The 3-minute thesis started out as a competition at the University of Queensland in Australia in 2008 and has spread to other countries since. The essence of the competition is for students to condense their research into a short presentation or an elevator speech that they can give to anyone, not just a specialist audience. Students will have 3 minutes and one static slide for their presentation. If they go over 3 minutes, they're disqualified. They'll be ranked on the basis of communication, delivery, and organization. The 7 graduate students you'll be hearing from tonight were chosen from their respective college competitions. Tonight's winner will move on to compete at the Midwest Association of Graduate Schools contest. Before we get underway tonight, I'd like to take a moment to introduce a few of our special guests who have joined us online in the audience. Illinois State University President Terry Goss-Kinsey, Provost Andave Tarhule, Associate Vice President for Research and Graduate Studies, Dr. Craig McLaughlin, our college deans and associate deans, our department chairs, and of course, the wonderful folks from the graduate school who have worked so hard to plan this event. Also, I would like to introduce our panel of 3 judges. With us, we have John Bauer, Professor of Chemistry Emeritus, AVP for Research and Graduate Studies, retired. We also have Jan Murphy, Professor of Family and Consumer Sciences Emeritus, and Vice President and Provost, retired. And Diane Wolf, Assistant Superintendent of Bloomington Public Schools. And we thank them for their efforts this evening. Also, for those of you in the audience, you have a little work to do as well, in addition to observing. While our judges will determine the first and second prize winners tonight, your votes alone will determine the People's Choice Award. After the presentations, we'll have a brief intermission while you vote for the People's Choice winner and while we tally scores for first and second place. So with all of that housekeeping out of the way, we are now ready to get underway. So I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Elizabeth Marsh from the College of Arts and Sciences.
Have you ever found yourself focusing on all the negative things? Ever gotten feedback at school or work that was mostly positive, but maybe there were 1 or 2 negative comments and you zeroed in on what was wrong? Then later, all you remember are the negative comments? Many people hyper-focus on the negative and discount the positive. This is referred to as a negative bias. Negative information gets prioritized because it easily captures our attention and is then better remembered than positive or neutral information. A negative bias can affect our cognitive processes, such as attention or memory, and then they contribute to the cause of disorders like depression and anxiety. People with depression or anxiety may seek out negative information that matches their mood or are hypervigilant for information that could trigger their anxiety. But do these biases extend to other disorders or even personality traits that are linked to these mental health issues? I wanted to examine to what extent these biases existed and how they were related in perfectionism. Perfectionists overly worry about mistakes, set unattainably high standards, and have a constant fear of failure or concern with perfection. I wondered if perfectionists would exhibit cognitive biases similar to those shown in people with mood disorders. However, toward cues that signal the possibility of failure, mistakes, and negative evaluations. In other words, do they prioritize perfectionism-relevant stimuli? I hypothesized that perfectionism would be related to attention and memory bias for perfectionism-relevant and negative information, but that this relationship would not exist for positive or neutral information. To test this prediction, participants completed an attention task and a recognition task that included 4 categories of words: perfectionism-relevant, negative, positive, and neutral words. Then they completed a measure of perfectionism. I found that perfectionism was directly related to memory bias for perfectionism words. Furthermore, those higher in perfectionism had more accurate memory for both perfectionism relevant and negative words, and were less accurate for positive or neutral words. Overall, this was the first study to examine cognitive biases of attention and memory in perfectionism. Understanding these biases can help improve mental health as perfectionism has become more prevalent and increasingly linked to mental health issues. Thank you.
Just a friendly reminder for everyone to know your screen has not frozen. I know that that happens sometimes on Zoom, but there will be a short break in between each presentation so that our judges can tally their scores. We'll be right back with you. Thanks again, everyone, for your patience. It's now time for our next presenter, Alan Atkins from the Won-Soo Kim College of Fine Arts.
Well, I'm a visual artist who works mainly with colored pencils, alcohol-based markers, and pens. I illustrate overlooked or misrepresented histories and narratives and honor contributions of Black cultures. From the 16th to 19th centuries, Europeans have rooted millions of people from Western and Central Africa and shipped them across the Atlantic in cruel conditions in what would be known as the Atlantic slave trade. Most hurricanes that affect American and Caribbean coasts where slaves were sold start at the same point of exodus near Africa and travel the exact same path as slave ships. It's believed that hurricanes are the spirits of our ancestors, specifically African women who've been beaten, raped, murdered, and thrown overboard slave ships and brought to enslaved lands. This was my inspiration in creating Spirit of the African Woman. Generally, histories of Black people are only associated with slavery in the Americas or a generalized perception of being from Africa, not a specific country, group, or region on this massive continent, just Africa. Part of what was stolen when we think about slavery was that lineage. Many people don't even feel comfortable claiming Africa because of uncertainty of where people come from. There are many complexities of Black identities, specifically in the US. Some Black people originally from other countries who live in the US must accept African American simply because of its historical and cultural roots in the Black American experience. Pieces like Yasuke, the African Samurai, King, and Glory detail overlooked Black experiences and explore how globalization, slavery, and colonization have fragmented history, creating a lack of publicized information regarding Black ancestry and narratives. Yasuke was an enslaved African man brought to Japan by the Portuguese in the 1500s. He reached the rank of samurai under Oda Nobunaga, a powerful 16th century Japanese feudal lord. Glory details the trans-Saharan slave trade, which involved transportation of millions of Africans from sub-Saharan Africa to the Islamic Middle East from the 7th to 20th centuries. Valued males who survived castration served as a military force beginning in the 9th century. Most were infantry, some composed cavalry units for Muslim rulers. King functions similarly to melanin collage by detailing the perceptions of Black men and stereotypes, as well as experiences existing currently within Black communities. With melanin collage, I use photography taken from communities the mainstream media would deem dangerous and say only struggle exists. I explore the lack of acknowledgement and accountability for the harsh conditions that we're exposed to that dictate our quality of life. Access to employment, healthcare, and other resources are offered to many Black communities sparsely. Through experimentation with collage, scale, and multiple layers of media and meaning, from all workplaces, subjects, and realms and atmospheres, the questions one's identities, memories, and physical place in the world. Thank you.
Our next presenter this evening is Jennifer Zhang from the College of Arts and Sciences.
Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, I was scared for myself, my family, and my community. Because of that, I'm passionate about the topic I'm studying for my thesis. Asian hate crimes have grown since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. Currently, there are more than 10,000 hate instances against Asian American and Pacific Islanders. As the coronavirus spread into the United States, former President Donald Trump immediately blamed China, and he did so by referring to the virus as the Chinese virus. This prompted his followers to also use the anti-Asian language. As a result of his rhetoric, expressions of anti-Asian sentiments and hate crimes grew exponentially. The assaults have occurred because of the belief that Asian people are responsible for the spread of the coronavirus. This is not a new concept, since immigrants have often been associated with diseases and germs. With all of this being said, the topic receives special attention today because of the rhetoric of a president who has capitalized on an existing surge of anti-foreigner sentiments. The topic of Asian American representations need to be discussed more since we Asian Americans are hardly discussed from public political culture. During the 2020 election, Asian Americans were rarely talked about. Even when looking at news about COVID-19 deaths and everyday challenges, Asian American stories and experiences were largely ignored. This thesis examines expressions of anti-Asian sentiments and Asian hate from a rhetorical perspective. I approached the study through rhetorical criticism that looks at both Donald Trump's tweets and speeches to look at common themes. The study reveals how rhetoric can fuel the increasing target for violence and hatred. The findings of the study shows the influence of presidential rhetoric and helps us gain an understanding of how a president's voice is amplified and therefore is more dangerous due to the impact of their rhetoric. Trump has contributed to and helped encourage this anti-Chinese culture, and he did so by saying, for example, the plague from China, the Chinese flu, Chinese virus, Kung flu, just to name a few, instead of referring to it as COVID-19. Now we can see one example on this slide where Trump blamed the Chinese virus for the failure of the airline industries. These kind of comments coming from the most esteemed position in American government is very alarming, and as an Asian American, also really disturbing given that people like me have to live in fear. This topic is important for academic critics to study and analyze to explain the discourse surrounding and impacting marginalized groups to those who may be unfamiliar with it. Please remember that Asians are not viruses, but hate is. Thank you.
Our next presenter this evening is Jake Silca from the College of Arts and Sciences.
According to the CDC, young adults 18 to 24 display the highest rates of both alcohol dependency and excessive drinking. This is unfortunate, given excessive drinking is associated with potentially dire consequences. 1,500 students die each year due to an alcohol-related incident. As an aspiring university psychologist, I'm driven to understand what contributes to student drinking behaviors. Research suggests that personality and motivational factors are important contributors to alcohol use and related problems. Regarding personality, narcissistic traits have been linked with various alcohol use outcomes, including increased rates of drinking and aggressive behavior when intoxicated. Specifically, I'm referring to narcissistic grandiosity, characterized by inflated self-esteem, perceived entitlement, and manipulativeness. In addition to grandiose traits, another important factor is a student's drinking motive, the reason they drink. Studies suggest 4 distinct motives. Enhancement, do we wish to boost euphoria? Coping, do we wish to bury guilt or shame? Conformity, do we wish to fit in with those around us? And social, do we feel inclined to drink for certain events? While research suggests that aspects of one's personality relate to their most exercised motive, no known study has examined how grandiose traits and drinking motives work together to contribute to one's rate of alcohol use, binge drinking frequency, and consequences experienced. This was the purpose of my study. I collected survey data from ISU students to examine the additive influence of narcissistic grandiosity and drinking motives on multiple alcohol use outcomes. Results indicated that students with stronger grandiose traits, when drinking either to enhance or conform, were more likely to consume alcohol both in higher quantity and frequency, with enhancement motives playing the strongest role. The relationship for enhancement is on the displayed figure. Surprisingly, drinking motives did not play a role in the relation between grandiose traits and consequences experienced. This may lead future studies to consider additional factors, such as alcohol expectancy and drinking context. Going forward, these findings provide insight into how one's personality and drinking motives contribute to hazardous use. It may assist academic institutions in strengthening intervention programs aimed at reducing student alcohol misuse. Thank you.
Our next presenter is Brie Ritchie from the College of Applied Science and Technology.
You know that hurts so good feeling when someone's massaging a knot in your shoulder, and you know that as soon as they're done, you're going to feel and move better? Well, athletes involved in repetitive overhead sports like baseball, softball, and volleyball also get these knots. Think about how they could benefit from treatment as well. The repetitiveness of these overhead sports can eventually lead to what's called posterior shoulder tightness, which is common in overhead athletes, but often goes unnoticed. To a point, this can actually be an advantage for these athletes because it turns their shoulder into a spring-loaded whip. However, the problem starts when the springs become wound too tightly and the muscles begin to develop knots, or what we call trigger points, commonly located in the infraspinatus muscle. The infraspinatus is a part of the rotator cuff muscle group and covers a portion of your shoulder blade. When it's excessively tight, an athlete will begin to lose too much forward shoulder rotation and gain too much backward shoulder rotation, leading to a decrease in backward shoulder rotation strength. When this happens, it prevents the infraspinatus muscle from maximally contracting, negatively impacting the spring-loaded whip, and ultimately increasing the athlete's risk of developing a more serious shoulder pathology like a rotator cuff tear. In general, treating these knots and trigger points with manual pressure techniques has been linked to improvements in range of motion and strength. Studies have observed improvements of forward shoulder rotation through the use of instrument-assisted manual therapy techniques in baseball players. However, these techniques often require the use of more than one clinician, costly tools, expensive certifications, and baseball players are primarily the only population in which these improvements have been observed in. Through my research, I have started to examine the benefits of manual pressure techniques by treating 2 trigger points in the infraspinatus muscle. I see each athlete on 3 different days, separated by 24 to 48 hours. On the first 2 days, they receive manual pressure treatment, and I get their forward and backward shoulder rotation and strength measurements. On the 3rd day, I only take their measurements, allowing me to track the short-term and long-term effects of the treatment. I want to show that improvements in forward shoulder rotation and backward shoulder rotation strength can be done with just one clinician without the use of any costly tools or certifications on not only baseball players, but a variety of overhead athletes. So the next time you go to wince or cringe because someone's digging that knot out in your shoulder, just remember it'll be worth it in the end. Thank you.
Up next is Bethany Worley from the College of Applied Science and Technology.
Last time you drove out of town, what did you see? There, as most Illinois farm fields are left with no living cover after fall harvest. But fields left empty over the winter are known sources of nutrient and sediment pollution into surface waters, which can issues on both the local and national scale. These impacts can be mitigated by planting a cover crop, which is typically grown solely for its environmental benefit. But only 3% of Illinois acres report planting a cover crop, and this is largely due to a lack of economic incentive, as most cover crops are terminated before they can produce a marketable product. This pennycress is a solution to this problem. Pennycress is proposed to be planted and fit into our current crop rotation. It's planted after fall harvest in the fall, overwinters as a rosette in the spring, and reaches maturity in the early summer. And this is early enough to allow for its oil seeds to be harvested before the normal summer crop is planted. However, most preliminary pennycress research has taken place in well-maintained plots that don't really represent the conditions in a typical farm field. My research seeks to management of pennycress in the field conditions following fall harvest. Corn is typically planting date past its ideal window. So we tried planting pennycress after alternative corn hybrids with fewer days to maturity, meaning that pennycress can be planted earlier in the spring. Another challenge is all of the corn residue left on the field after harvest, which makes it hard for pennycress to get the good seed to soil contact that it needs for proper establishment. We consider chopping or using light tillage to see if pennycress could handle smaller sized residues. Included for comparison with both the planting date and residue management strategies were plots harvested for silage, where the entire corn plant was removed for cattle feeding in the early fall, leaving behind a virtually residue-free environment. How much better the pennycress establishment and yield were in the field conditions following this low residue environment than in any of the conditions following corn harvest, regardless of the planting date or residue management strategy. This tells us that pennycress planted after crops with minimal crop residues, and this could include soy, which we will be looking at next. Before long, your winter drives out of town may look much different, with a lot less of the nothing and a lot more of this environmentally beneficial green cover crop.
And now our final presenter of the evening, Britannia Howe from the Wonsu Kim College of Fine Arts.
A story of rising to a challenge and defying expectations, all while looking fabulous. I'm an MFA directing candidate, and directing Legally Blonde the musical is my thesis project. 15 years ago, this Broadway musical questioned gender bias in the legal field with its feminist themes. Some people may think this play is cute, but like our very own Elle Woods, who goes from California sorority girl to Ivy League law student, I believe it is more than it seems. It's valuable to explore feminist questions through theater because it exposes difficult topics like sexual assault in Ivy League schools, how harsh backlash can be from society when you don't conform, and seeking justice in the face of adversity are made digestible to encourage change. Humor is our greatest teacher. Not only does Elle get admitted into Harvard, what, like it's hard? She advances up to the top of her male-dominated class while keeping her feminine qualities. She shows us that a woman can be a lawyer or a theater director while wearing pink. It is my job to understand all of the ideas and themes and create a present-day point of view that will drive this production. A lot has changed since 2005 as feminism has become more intersectional. Statistics show us that in the last 5 years, more women graduate law school than men. However, there is still a 2-to-1 ratio in the work field. The American Bar Association states, quote, that all these issues apply with greater force to women attorneys of color who face the double bind of gender and race, end quote. In 2022, we have a different lens, which is why we need this play now. This show was written and originally cast with predominantly white actors. So we asked ourselves, who is being left out of this story? This led us to cast racially diverse and gender nonconforming actors in roles that historically they haven't been considered for, to create a sisterhood of different voices. When working with the actors, I use the rehearsal room as a laboratory, using techniques and exercises that freed the actors to physicalize a presence of empowerment. I facilitated discussions of current politics to help the actors make discoveries and choices for this production. Theater for social change is a call to action. It demands that we examine ourselves in the mirror. I believe that if we study societal issues like this one and attempts to find a solution through the arts of theater, music, and laughter, it can encourage empathy and stimulate change. Thank you.
Congratulations to each of our students, and a thank you for their work that was both interesting and important, and we wish you the very best of luck. While the judges do their work, we also have work for you in the audience. We're asking now that you please, on the poll that we've put up on Zoom, cast your vote for our People's Choice Award winner. You will have 1 minute to cast your votes. Meanwhile, while the judges are deliberating, we have some additional entertainment for you. I'd like to introduce Marina Teplova. Marina is a doctoral student at Illinois State. She's also from the Ukraine, or from Ukraine, I should say. We should take a moment, certainly, to think of what she and her loved ones and her friends are going through. Our hearts, Marina, are with you and all of those in Ukraine this evening and in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you for performing for us tonight. And with that, Marina, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, RC. Thank you.
And again, we'd like to thank Marina for sharing her talents with us tonight. Thank you very much. I'm sure if we were here in person, you'd be hearing thunderous applause right now. Thank you again. And the same can no doubt be said of our presenters tonight. And now it is time to announce our winners. Our first announcement is for the second place winner, and that award goes to Jake Silca from the College of Arts and Sciences. Congratulations to you, Jake. Our first place award goes to Britannia Howe from the Won-Soo Kim College of Fine Arts. And now for the announcement of the People's Choice Award. And that also goes to Britannia Howe from the Won-Soo Kim College of Fine Arts. Congratulations to everyone for a job well done, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Certainly we want to thank you, everyone with the graduate school, as well as our participants, for putting all of this together. Now, before we go, we do want to turn things over for one last thing. We present Noelle Selko, Director of the Graduate School. Noelle?
Thank you, RC. I just wanted to thank you all for joining us today. As you can imagine, this would have been great to be in person and to see everybody, but to do this in a virtual platform, our participants did an excellent job, and this is one of our signature events that we're most proud of. So thank you for being a part of that today. As we mentioned earlier, or that you saw on our rolling screen at the beginning, today is Birds Give Back, and we would love to encourage you to participate and support the graduate school in events like this, among other things. We provide scholarships for students, professional development, and support our graduate student and Black student graduate associations. Again, please spread the word. We do have a challenge that we are a few donors short of reaching, and if we hit 25 donations, we will have a $1,000 gift released to us. So again, just wanted to put that plug out there to help support our students. And again, thank you for attending today's event. And we hope to see you next year at the Normal Theater. Have a great night.